here to help you with breeze, planting seeds and teaching skills. Teachers turn schoolyards to dreams. Who hates school gardens with ease?
Hello and welcome to School Gardens with Ease podcast. I'm your host, Leila Mireskandari, and this is episode number 18. In this episode, I want to change gears from giving you technical classroom gardening tips and tricks and advice to talking a little bit about the myths that surround this topic. Because no matter how much you know the technicalities of it and the techniques and tricks, if you don't put it into practice, that makes absolutely no difference. And if your mind is cluttered with myths and half truths, you won't take the slightest step towards it. A cluttered and confused mind either freezes or jumps into the wrong actions at the wrong time, which is even worse. I want you to know the truth and all the truth about this so that you take the right actions and grow amazing teaching gardens for all the right reasons with all the right actions. Okay. And I promise that I will not sugarcoat this. I will tell you all the good and the pretty alongside all the difficult and the ugly. Okay. So let's get started and tackle some myths. Myth number one. People think to grow a school garden, you need to start with gathering as many people and volunteers to support you as you can. Well, yes and no. Let me explain. You need to be super careful who you're bringing in to support and exactly what type of support you need them to give you. There is a misconception that the more people you gather to support you and volunteer for you, the easier growing this school garden of yours will be. That is a big mistake that everyone makes. I'd say the more people you gather, the more chaotic it gets because more people means more opinions and more demands and more expectations and all of that, more organizing and supervising. Especially if you don't give the right tasks to the right people and neglect defining roles and responsibilities correctly and clearly. It gets so chaotic. So be super careful with that. In fact, you absolutely do not need anyone or anything other than you, your class, and your lesson plans and growing guides. And that's it. To grow an amazing classroom garden and even to grow an outdoor school garden, that's all you need. If you grow an outdoor school garden, because you don't have to, that's why I say if, but if you do that, then you'll need the parents of your students to bring them during summer for watering the garden. That's one support you need. And you might also need them to, raise funds for your project, so that you can buy quality seeds, quality soil, lesson plans, things like that. And honestly, that's it. That's all you need from your community. And if they are more involved in this, they will get in your way. They will be intrusive. They will, disturb your teaching plans. They're going to want to do work that your students should be doing, etc., etc. So don't forget that a school garden is a teaching tool. Community should support you, the teacher, to have the funds and also support you during summer. They shouldn't design your garden. They shouldn't sow for you, transplant for you. They shouldn't water the garden during the school year. They shouldn't touch anything. Hey, you even shouldn't be touching anything, actually, because you don't want to deprive your students from the hands on learning that this garden brings to them, right? So that's the first myth, that you need to gather as many volunteers as you can to grow this garden. Myth number two. Most teachers think growing a school garden is a lot of hard work. Well, that's probably because they have never done it before, the right way at least, and they have never seen a teacher do it the easy way, or they've seen teachers doing really hard work with very little to show for it. So they assume it's hard. And if you're one of them, I don't blame you. Truth is, though, there is an easy and the right way to grow a school garden, and there's a million and one hard and difficult and wrong ways to do it. And I'm here to show you the right way. If you follow my advice, it will be so easy that at the end of the day, you won't believe what just happened. So, this is also a half truth. Yes, It can absolutely be difficult, but it can also be super easy and magical. Depends on whose advice you follow and which common mistakes you avoid. It's a lot more about what not to do. For example, as I was just mentioning, myth number one, not to gather 1,000,001 people to volunteer for you in your garden. It's more about not what not to do than it is about what to do. I don't want to sound super arrogant here, but show me one more person who's grown school gardens for over a decade full time. I speak from experience and I know what I'm talking about. So follow my advice and it'll be super easy. Myth number three, growing a school garden needs a ton of extra time. Totally wrong. Let me tell you this first. I know how busy teachers are, okay? I might not have been a classroom teacher myself, but I have worked alongside hundreds of teachers over the past decade. I've been there, seen that, and I've tweaked my gardening programs and lesson plans a million times to fit teachers' busy lives. I have a lot of respect for teachers. There are no words that can describe your level of busy. And the amount of critical decisions you have to make during a week, hell, even during a day, depending on what type of teacher you are, blows my mind. That's why I am 100% against growing a school garden on the weekends, afternoons, and even lunchtime. That's why I'm against those lunchtime gardening clubs and after hour extracurriculars that are ran by teachers. Growing a garden with clubs has a lot of problems, but one of the most important one of them is that teachers have to spend their personal time running those clubs. Some teachers gather volunteers amongst parents and run planting events and try to grow a school garden that way. Oh goodness. Don't you know how much time organizing people and supervising them takes? A lot. In fact, teachers usually grow their gardens outside their classroom time, and that's exactly why they think it needs a lot of extra time. That's why they get exhausted. And because growing a school garden with clubs and planting events, the community has a lot of different other problems too. Their gardens don't grow well either, which makes things even worse. You ask them, how did it go? And they're like, oh God, don't ever try this because it's so much work, so much time, and it's just not, it doesn't even work. It's not worth it. If they used their class time and grew their garden while teaching math, science, language, arts, etc. in the garden, not only it would have been easy, but they would not need to, spend barely any time outside of their prep or class time. Believe it or not, school gardens grow much better this way too, and they are what they need to be, which is a teaching tool. This wrong practice of growing gardens with clubs and through community planting events is what perpetuates this myth that school gardens need a lot of extra time. They don't. You just have to do them with the right people, aka your students, and at the right time, aka your class time. Myth number four. People say, but summer is the growing season, and that's exactly when schools are closed, so there's no point in growing a school garden. Oh goodness, honestly, there is nothing more wrong than this statement, because the growing season in the sense of the act of growing is not summer at all. It's spring. Yes, the plants do most of their growing in summer, but you don't need your students to be there to watch them grow. Other than watering, which is, I admit, very, very important, there's nothing else to do in summer. The majority of work of growing the garden happens in spring, and the majority of work of harvesting it happens in fall. And schools are open during both of these periods. So I don't know what these people are talking about. Don't let them just say anything baseless and discourage you from growing a school garden. Myth number five is that you need to know how to grow food to grow a school garden. This is a half truth that discourages most teachers from even trying, because there is no denying that most of us have not ever grown food in our lives. And that's right, okay? We just haven't been taught how to. We've never been given the opportunity. Even though that you do need to have the right guides, know how to start, what mistakes not to make and avoid, and all of that. Growing a school garden is much more about teaching than it is about gardening. We're talking about growing a teaching tool, not a farm that's supposed to, feed people, or the home garden that's supposed to entertain the owners. Such teaching tool is mostly about teaching and a little bit about gardening. That little bit about gardening you can learn so quickly you won't believe. The teaching is what you know how to do best, and the best farmers and gardeners of the world have the slightest idea how to do it. You need to know what seeds to grow and which ones to avoid. You do need to know when to plant which according to your frost dates. You do need to know the best practices on how to start seeds indoors in a school environment. I have a guide on seed starting indoors for schools that I will link in the show notes, and it's really an inexpensive guide too. That teaches you everything you need to know to get started strong. The part you need to pay extra attention to is writing lesson plans to grow this garden into existence during your class time. That needs teaching skills, not gardening skills. I will dedicate a future episode to writing lesson plans. For now, go grab that guide that I will link in the show notes. And these are the 5 biggest myths about growing school gardens. I hope this helps. Don't let them stop you from growing the teaching garden of your dreams. I'll talk to you next week in another episode. You've listened to the entire episode, and for that, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, please leave me a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And please share this episode with other teachers who might be interested in this topic. See you next week for a new episode.